All right. Welcome, folks. We are just opening up for our participants, and we'll give it just another minute. We're, we're exactly here at 1:30. I mean, 11:30.
11:30.
I
Yes. You're rushing our day.
know. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get started and just
Okay.
welcome everyone. It is so great to have you join us for today's Lunch and Learn. We were just talking before we opened it up that everybody's schedule we know is really wacky. Hope that today, starting school on time for your kids is bringing back a little bit of feeling of normalcy, but we know it's been a hectic and difficult freezing cold week for you guys. So thanks for coming. And I'm going to just quickly go through a few logistics on these opening slides before I pass it on to today's amazing speaker. Um, First off, I want to say this workshop is obviously in English, but we do like to point out that folks can choose a different language in closed caption. And we know translated closed captions isn't perfect, but it can certainly help with comprehension if English is not your first language. And then I'm going to introduce myself in our office. My name is Ramsey Mahavitz. I'm the resource teacher with Baltimore County Schools in the Office of Family Support Services. Family Support Services does a lot of things, but one of our primary goals is to offer information through workshops and consultations. We want to share information and community resources so families have some information and skills to support their own children. And then we also offer lots of information on those special education processes and the IEP document itself, which can be confusing, just to help families feel more confident in participating in some special education decision-making processes. But without further ado, I'm just going to do two quick slides. Hold on. There we go. I'm not accustomed to Zoom. There we go. Just basic norms. You've seen this so many times. You're here today for a virtual workshop. We find that it's very helpful to reduce distractions, just to stay on mute and camera off. If you could do that, that just helps everybody else put their attention on the presentation itself and the presenter. So I myself will turn my camera off soon. The other important thing in here is to make sure that we remind folks to avoid, there will be time for questions, and we want to remind folks to be careful that they don't share any identifying information when they ask questions. So we don't want names of students or teachers or names of schools, but just the general question. And then my last slide is I'll point you first to the orange box. With that said, about avoiding any identifying information, I do want to make sure that everyone's aware that Family Support Services is here for you, and we do offer one-on-one private consultation where you can share all of that identifying information. So those are a couple of ways to reach our office. And today's speaker, Dr. Hope, is if you have questions for her, we are certainly going to allow you to use the chat feature in Zoom to put some questions in, and she'll periodically stop and we'll go through those. And then depending on our number, we may even encourage, certainly at the end, to come off of the mute and put your cameras on. We'll stop recording and you can do some questions at the end as well. Okay, so oops, backslide. Let's just, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'll stop
Okay.
sharing. Dr. Hope we are super thrilled to have her back again. This is her second time with us. She is a clinical, I'm going to stop sharing to help you be able to share.
There we go.
So she's a clinical psychologist in the Child and Family Therapy Clinic at Kennedy Krieger. where she has been for over 20 years. And she has clinical interest in working with school age through young adult um, clients, assisting them with ADHD, which is what we're here to talk about today, but also with anxiety, depression, autism, Tourette
Hmm.
syndrome. So she's a wealth of knowledge. Over the years, she's provided many seminars and workshops to schools and caregivers. And like I said, we're thrilled to have her back again. And let I will go ahead and mute and go off camera and let you begin. Thank you and welcome, Dr. Hope.
All right. Thank you very much, Ramsey. Um, we're going to talk about ADHD and executive function. I will pause periodically to try and field questions and try to hold some questions for the end as well. At the very end of the slide presentation, you'll have my email address, and you can always reach out to me by email. I will respond. I love outreach and working with all of the families. Okay, so Ramsey will be sending you a handout of all of these slides, and my slides are kind of verbose so that you'll be able to, read through the directions. And in addition to the handouts of the slides, you're going to have some additional handouts that's supportive material, and I'll go through it on the slides. But again, if you have questions about it later after the presentation, feel free to email me. Okay, so let's get started here. Um, all right, so you have Ramsey's information. These first few slides, I'm going to kind of zoom through because I want to get to some of the meat of strategies and skills that can be developed. So we're going to go through the goals of discussing ADHD, executive function across home and a little bit of school, some of the challenges that can come up. If you want to know about diagnosing for ADHD and the symptomatology, you can go to this website, psychiatry.org. They're the authors of the DSM 5 treatment revised, so TR, and it will tell you all of the symptomatology for diagnosis with ADHD. With ADHD, there are basically three primary symptoms that you can have, and you could have one of the categories like inattention or just the hyperactivity that's often blended with impulsivity, or you could have all of them, right? What most people don't realize because it's not in the title is that impulsivity, like not stopping to think before you speak or before you act, impulsivity is a significant symptom or category within ADHD. The official diagnostic categories, they're listed here on the slide. But again, I've given you the website where you can go and explore and read about diagnosis. For this slide, again, it's verbose because I want you to have a cup of coffee and go back and reread the slides. The primary information here is I want you to recognize that this is a neurological developmental difficulty, that there's generally a 3-year delay in social emotional development for individuals that have ADHD. So someone that is 15, is going to be functioning more like 12. Someone that's 10 is going to be functioning for some areas of development more like 7. And I want you to keep that in mind because we want goodness of fit in what we're expecting of our children and where our children are, right? We want them to gradually grow and not expect them just to, like leap over several years of development. The frontal cortex is kind of the home of executive function. And this is where we see a delay in growth or a delay in thickening and development in the brain. For MRI research, a lot of people are like, oh, I want an X-ray or an MRI. We can't actually do individual MRIs or X-rays or lab work for diagnosis of ADHD, but there's a lot of research out there that looks at large group studies, large numbers of individuals, and we look at ADHD and what does the brain look like as compared to someone that doesn't have ADHD. And generally speaking, what you see is that the brain just doesn't all the portions of the brain don't connect and intertwine and talk to each other. Whereas someone without ADHD, the MRI is bright and it's lit up. Um, Here is another example, and you'll see this also with medication and ADHD. An individual that has medication, an ADHD individual with medicine, their MRIs, again, group studies, will be big and bright and lit up, and the brain's, like talking, and it's all intertwined, and you can see that. Whereas an individual that has ADHD and doesn't necessarily utilize medication, again, their brain just isn't talking and communicating across all the areas. So, executive function, I don't know how many people know about executive function or are familiar with executive function. I know the phrase gets thrown around a lot. It is a huge, broad category of a lot of different skills and development. It's the ability here, I've listed them all, for your memory to be focused and attending on tasks, to persevere even if a task gets really hard. It's the ability to have an internal clock and be able to a little bit estimate time or have good time management. So, if you're ever wondering, like, gosh, why do I or why does my kiddo have a challenge with something, look at this slide and stop to think like, okay, does it fit in somewhere here? And then you'll know, oh, that's an executive function deficit. And it's something that we can work on for building skills with some of the strategies that we're talking about. With executive function, if you want to read a little bit more about it, again, here's a website, understood.org. Wonderful, wonderful online magazine, newspapers, very informative, has lots of skills and strategies and topics and so forth. But they will teach you about executive function, and they'll teach you a lot of different uh, ways to overcome some of the challenges. So I want you to realize ADHD is an official DSM-5-TR diagnosis. It's an official diagnosis. Executive function disorder or deficit, that is not an official DSM diagnosis. And there are individuals with ADHD, most of which have executive function difficulties, but they don't have to, right? And the opposite is also can be true. There, I have met many people that have executive function difficulties, but they don't meet full criteria for ADHD. So just because you have one doesn't mean you have to have the other. Okay, to build executive function skills, and this is the bad news, I'm sorry, there's not a cure. There's really not. It's skill building. It's waiting until we have enough maturity, our age grows, we've had enough experience, and we've built some skills and strategies, repetition, repetition, repetition. And in the meantime, it's the environment. So that means parents and teachers, other people supporting the individual so that we're setting up the environment, the actual room, the actual home, the actual classroom, and the people that are working with that individual or live with that individual to help them to be successful. All right. So how long does it take? It just there's not a specific, I can't say, oh, 5 years. Nope. It takes as long as it takes. There is a hallmark phrase of the only consistency in ADHD is inconsistency, because you'll see someone and they've got a skill, they're doing it, they're on it for several weeks or a couple months or so, and then all of a sudden they have a day or two and it seems like they've lost the skill. So again, repetition, repeat, 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 and help them until they have it. The brain typically stops growing around age 25 to 30. Again, individual differences. So around that age, that's when we're going to know like how many individuals will grow out of or will have developed enough so that the challenges of ADHD or the executive function difficulties no longer impact them. Estimation, it's about 50%. Okay. Okay. So your job as a parent or as a teacher is truly like lending the frontal lobe of your brain, and helping the individual in the moment. So when we start in teaching executive function skills, this is where I start. My style in talking is I'm going to basically show you like a lot of different therapy sessions, things that I would do week after week or every 2 weeks after every 2 weeks, teaching you and say, go home and do this and learn this. For you all, what I would love for you to do is, bookmark some topics or some slides and say, oh, yeah, that's a good place for us to start. I'm starting at the beginning right here. This is what I would check on with you all to make sure no matter how old you are, I don't preschool, elementary, middle school, high school, young adult years, our clinic, we go up to age 26. And while I have a wide range of ages, I've been doing this for several decades. Like I work all the way up with my young adults. I love them, transitioning from high school into those young adult years as well. And I will tell you, Ramsey and I were talking about this earlier. Oftentimes, when I'm working with my kids, and again, kids goes all the way up to age 26 for me, then I work with the parents too. And I make sure the parents have these skills. So sometimes I'll just meet with the parents to say, hey, how are you on these things? Because I want you to be able to model and practice so that way you're better at teaching. Okay, so let's do this. Sleep. You need a sleep schedule. Everyone needs a sleep. I need a sleep schedule. We all need a sleep schedule. Like 2 or 3 years ago, I bought a Fitbit. It doesn't have to be Fitbit. I don't own stock in Fitbit, but a sports watch or sleeper tracker of sorts because I just wanted to, that was my goal. I wanted to improve my sleep and make sure I was getting good quality sleep. And I was reminding myself, like, oh, you got to go to bed. Sleep is very, very important to manage stress. So we need a good sleep schedule. I tell everyone the idea is to get as many hours as you can and to get those during the nighttime. We want to be awake during daytime hours, and we want to be asleep at night during nighttime hours. So my kiddos that want to stay awake until midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I always say, what are you doing at that hour that you can't do during the day? Like if it's dark out, we need to be sleeping. Daytime, we need to be awake. That's the way our internal brain, circadian rhythms, hormones, everything is sequenced to sleep at night, be awake and alert and focused during the day. Okay, so I'm going to work with people on their sleep schedule. Healthy eating is important in this day and age of caffeine and those high energy drinks and sports drinks and everything else. Chips. I just heard Frito-Lay is going to reduce prices on all of their junk food by 15% or something like that. And I went, oh, yeah, that's great. Now people are going to eat more Cheetos. I love Cheetos. But at the same time, we need to have moderation. We need to eat good, healthy food so that we have a stable blood sugar and we're not going up and down with our energy. We're not going up and down with our focus or how tired we are or our emotions, right? If our energy, if our blood sugar is going up and down, our emotion regulation is going to go up and down. Not so great. Exercise, even light exercise, is important. ADHD individuals oftentimes have this kinesthetic hyperactivity motor movement. I want to move. I feel like I need to fidget. Light exercise helps, or strenuous, whatever you want to do, but at least light exercise helps get that out and helps, move the body and satisfies that kinesthetic, need that we have. We need also relaxation. An ADHD individual, whether they're inattentive or they're go, 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 hyperactive, impulsive type, we need to teach them how do you relax without electronics, please. Please, without electronics. What do you do, like how can you just like chill out? If you're busy 7 days out of the week and it's go, 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 you're encouraging and kind of feeding that ADHD hyperactivity, but you're also then kind of not allowing a person to learn how to chillax and just be calm and enjoy life without go, go, go all the time. So try to create a list, literally get a legal pad, create a list of what are all the other things I could be doing instead of, like running out the door and jumping in the car and going to activities. What can I do around the house? What are all the hobbies and arts and crafts and things that I've bought over the years? Let's pull some of those things out. Okay. Second, I would check on the rules. I always ask families, what are the rules in the house? We need to have rules. They need to be clear. They need to be consistent, right? Which means parents have to enforce them or repeat them in a nice way. So have a short list, post the rules, enforce the rules, be consistent. If you have to use like consequences, punishment kind of consequences, for reinforcing the rules, we need them to be short-term consequences. So for this afternoon, you will have lost TV privileges. For tonight, you will not have playtime. Or for one day, you will not have access to, I keep going with electronics, to your Xbox or whatnot, whatever it might be, or hand me your phone. I want your phone for the next 24 hours. But short-term consequences, so the kids don't give up, and instead the kids go, okay, I'm going to try again, and I'm going to do better. So we have rules. I have given you handouts with examples of, sets of rules. It's a small set of rules. You can see here, I put in parentheses, like appropriate language, nice words. So for a younger kid, I'm going to say, oh, we need to use our body nicely. We need to have, a nice mouth, nice words, nice ears, good listening, nice eyes, I'm looking at you. We need to have nice hands, right? I'm not going to hit. Nice feet. I'm not going to jump on the furniture. So I use the body as a starting place for my rules. But here's a list that's for a little bit older. And again, this goes all the way up through, I don't know, there's not an end of the age limit on this really. So here's an example of rules. Keep it short, post it someplace, refer to it, always. And that way, again, that's repeat, repeat, repeat. And so we have learning. Daily routines are so important. Routines are repeating an activity on a consistent basis. And that's how we have learning. That's how we instill something. If we have it on a list, a post-it note, or a chart, that would be fantastic. And I've given you some handouts on how do you post a daily routine. And a daily routine can be your morning wake up routine. It could be a dinner routine or a homework routine. It's easiest to make improvement on small areas of life at first. So pick a routine that's not horribly difficult. Figure out what are the steps, what do we need to do, to make this routine successful. Write them down. You can use it like a checklist or you can just use it for reference. But we look at the list, and we do it with our kids. We shape behavior. So if we model the behavior, if we're shaping the behavior, we're helping the kids to gain success, with it. I'll pause just for a second. Keep in mind not just the development of your kids, age-wise and what their developmental age is. Think about their daily disposition. Like, did I just run to Hershey Park for the whole day and exhaust myself and my kids, and now I'm home, but I'm saying, oh, go upstairs and do your nighttime routine? They're not going to be able to. They're going to be exhausted and wiped out. So instead, I'm going to keep that in mind and I'm going to go, hey, let's go do this together, right? I'm going to jump back into shaping and modeling and encouraging and comforting because I know they're not going to be at their best. So I know this is a big energy crunch for parents. I get this. I've been there, done that. Still do that sometimes, and my kids are 20 and 22. But this is what we do. This is how we, think about how to teach with the repetition until our kids really get it. So have daily routines, even have daily routines or weekly routines, weekly schedules, even during vacation time, right? So on all these snow days, I would have said to my families like, "Hey, take a sheet of paper and write a loose schedule of what's going to happen today." That way the kids know what to expect. They're not anxious and worried about what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What's happening next? And if they have any demands, they'll see whether their demands, what they would like to do, are going to be met, or maybe you guys could have a conversation. This all ties into transitions and managing expectations. And for ADHD individuals, inattentive or impulsive hyperactivity type, and I don't care what age, I really don't, this we want what we want when we want it, right? We have preferred ideas and we can be stellar 24/7 with our preferred activities and our preferred things that we really like. If it's reading, you're going to be gold mine at reading, right? You're going to really excel at reading. If it's video games, it's going to be video games. If it's basketball, okay. It doesn't matter the activity, it's the level of interest. And once the person has an interest, they're going to want to do that all the time, whatever their preferred activities are. So if we have a daily, weekly schedule for all of the days, no matter what the season, what type of week it is, then this helps our kids tremendously, and it helps us, gives us a break. Chores. There's a handout on this on chores. I also call chores independent living skills. So for my middle school and above, that's the phrase I use all the time, independent living skills. One day you're going to have an apartment. One day you might go to college and be in a dorm. One day you're going to have a home to take care of, right? So independent living skills means, yes, we have a set number of chores, and every once in a while my parents are going to, teach me something a little bit new. I'm not going to have to do it every day or every week, but I'm going to have a new task to learn for on an occasion. But for all chores or independent living skills, and again, I've given you a handout, you want to break the chores down into chunks, simplified instructions, one step at a time. For little kids, have pictures. Just put a bunch of pictures in a sequenced order of here are the steps that you're going to take and glue them on a piece of paper. Let them help you, set up the instructions. They would have fun doing that. And then again, you're going to shadow and teach so that they get this skill. This is an example of a chore card or an independent living card for putting up your laundry. And again, yes, you delineate every little step, every simplistic thing so that we know for sure, like, okay, from getting the basket of clothes from the laundry room all the way to the end of putting the basket back in your room where it goes so it can accept dirty clothes, right? So this is how you build success with tasks and chores. Okay, charts and rewards. People don't like to hear that charts and rewards work, but they do. They do. I try to tailor a chart or a reward system, of course, to the individual. It has to be salient. It has to be something that they like, that motivates them. So when I use charts and rewards, you have to remember follow through. Has to be posted someplace really where they can see it. We want to have smaller rewards, sometimes building up to a larger reward. ADHD individuals rarely have like intrinsic motivation for things that they don't find, things that are non-preferred. If it's reading, and I love reading, it's a preferred task, I don't need a reward. But if it's a non-preferred task and I'm learning something that's kind of tedious, I need an extrinsic, outside of me reward, motivation. So we come up with a chart, something that the kids like, something that I'm going to follow through, something that's reasonable, for me and my family. It's going to be posted. I'm going to look at it all the time and I'm going to tweak it. I'm going to adjust the rewards here and there to make sure that it stays motivating, for the kiddos. Again, I've given you some handouts, and some of the handouts for charts and rewards just looks like a checklist, right? Or it looks like an agenda sheet. And okay, this is what you do. You can laminate it and check it off, or you can print out a bunch of them and check them off every day. Some of them look more game-like for little kids. And there's, one that has like the frozen and it looks like a game piece. And for every day I do something, I can put a smiley face in. And at the end, I get to the treasure and I get a big reward. So whether or not you're a preschooler or all the way up, my young adults, charts and rewards work. You just have to tweak them so that they're salient, they connect with the individual. Okay. Giving a good instruction, basic parenting is extremely important. I know we all, as parents, we get frustrated sometimes and we're rushing. We've had a difficult day ourselves, so we don't always give good instructions. I've given you a handout on how to give a good instruction, how to, praise your kids and interact with your kids. Here's the short summary, be direct, be specific, try to have eye contact. And what that means is the child's at least paused and looked at you and they're listening. You've connected in some way. They don't have to stare at you the whole time. Some kids find staring and eye contact very uncomfortable. But I want to make sure I have their attention. I generally give the direction. It's not a question. I give a direction. It's a statement. I give a reminder. And if I have to get to the third count, then generally there's a consequence, meaning a punishment consequence of some sort. Or I might decide, like, hey, this is a difficult task, or I need to guide them and I need to continue to teach in shadow. So keep in mind, even for your older kids, the age doesn't matter. Is this something where I need to do it with them? Or is this something that I need to, like have an expectation like, oh no, they've got this one. They should be able to do it. Okay. All right. Praise, super important. Again, I've given you a handout on praise, a basic parenting handout on praise. It is so, so very important. We ADHD kiddos respond best to rewards and positives. Praise is a positive. It's patting them on the back. Even if they've only done a part of the task that you've asked, they made an attempt, they stuck with it, they got some of it done. You're praising them, and then maybe what they didn't get done, you're needing to help them. And hopefully, every time they do it, they get more and more done independently. A quick comment, if I have a kiddo that is depressed or I'm worried about their emotional stability towards sadness, I really need to go overboard with the praise. Generally, it's four praises to every, one kind of corrective statement. But if I have a depressed individual, it's nine praises for everyone. And a praise statement is so easy. You're just narrating, for your kid what they're doing. Hey, you got up. You did a fantastic job. You got ready for school. Oh, you got your shoes. Fantastic. I love that. Oh, you found your book bag. You can just narrate. Okay. Okay. So listening and communicating is super important. A lot of times ADHD kiddos really love to talk. So if they're needing to vent, we need to learn how to listen and listen, listen, listen. But we also need to teach them how to communicate with other people. So at the bottom of the slide, you can see that there's a little 3 to 5 sentence rule for communicating. So you don't do this all the time, but while you're teaching, sharing a conversation, you say, hey, we're going to try 3 to 5 sentences. Think about your day and to tell me a story, but let's try to keep it 3 to 5 sentences. And then they have to, trade the conversation. Here are the skills that I would use for listening and for speaking. So every time that we are doing a communication practice, I would have this sheet out and I would look like, okay, and you kind of grade each other. They can grade you. How did you do on these skills? And you can, grade them. And by a grade, you can say 0 to 10, like 10, you knocked it out of the box. You did great. Or it was like, oh, you were kind of at a 3. You weren't really listening very well. So practicing communication skills is important. This slide tells you how to practice. Take 10 to 20 minutes so you can go back to this slide and review what to do. Okay, body language and facial expressions, also part of communication. Make sure that you include that. For even older kids, I have this Inside Out movie on here. I love that movie, the original movie. Haven't seen the second movie, but I love the original movie. It was kind of like whoever wrote that knows about cognitive behavior therapy, truly, because it talks about our internal thoughts and our behaviors and our feelings and emotions and everything. So we want to be able to teach and make sure that the kids really understand emotion identification, reading body language, understanding the tone and volume of their themselves and other people and how to read it. So we want to pause sometimes in communicating and talk just about that. Like if you're talking with your kids, say, you know what? You might be looking at me right now and I don't know what it looks like, but I'm not mad at you. I just am rushed. I'm trying to get out the door. So you're stopping and pausing and explaining body language, explaining what to look at and teaching for the kids so they know what to focus on. Okay, in one of your handouts, I've given you a whole separate, smaller PowerPoint on that is specific to if you have a tween or a teenager, what to do, some parenting tips and skills and strategies. But again, all of the skills and strategies I'm talking about today, they apply for little kids all the way up through adulthood. They really do. We just need to kind of tweak them developmentally a little bit to make them appealing for the age of the individual. Again, I've given you a different PowerPoint handout on building social interactions and focusing on social skills. So if that is a challenge or a difficulty for your kiddo, all right, let me take a moment, talk about technology. I have a phone, I have a tablet, I have a computer here, I have a computer there. We have, like lots of computers in our house. We're all tech driven these days, but screens are not friendly for humans, and they're not, especially not friendly for ADHD. They increase the difficulties for focus and attention. And I don't have a solid answer for exactly what to do because our whole society is tech driven these days. But you can read through this. We're trying to develop interaction, social skills, and so forth. And technology interferes in that. So we want to limit technology. We know that video games, I don't care if it's a competitive video game, even if you're just competing against yourself to win the prize or win the points or whatnot, we know it increases aggression, it decreases empathy, and it lowers academic performance. So we really want to limit um, technology. Social media, again, not a good thing. Um, it's just not. ADHD individuals oftentimes are impulsive. Even if you're inattentive type, I've found that you still have levels of impulsivity that can occur, and you might quickly type something or push a button, and then you can't take it back. So we want to be really cautious and careful and, help our kids. The suggested limits are for technology use of any kind, a screen in front of your face. Here are the limits, and they're very strict. They're very, even for adults, 10 hours a week. I'm on technology way more than that. And I think the take home message then is to make sure that, after you've accounted for technology in school or technology at your job or your work, then limit as much as you can from an entertainment standpoint. And I always try to say, if you have a screen that's right in front of your face, that's worse than if I have a screen that's further back, like a television, for example. If I'm right here, I'm ignoring more of this, right? And my peripheral vision is not being utilized at all. But if I have a screen that's further at a distance, I've got at least some interaction with other things going on in the room. So I've given you a couple slides about talking to your kids about limiting electronics, increasing other extracurricular activities, and so forth. Do the best you can. Reward them for limiting technology. As they get older, you can explain kind of the brain the difficulties of how technology impacts our brain. I deleted like 3 or 4 slides on this. This could be a whole big presentation because there's so much science behind this. They just don't talk about it because we're a commercialized society and we use technology. So do your best. Try to have other alternatives to technology. Here are some ideas. Um, okay, Ramsey, I'm going to pause for a second. I was going to jump into a little bit of school stuff. How are we doing?
We're doing great, and I a couple of questions just about the handouts that you're
Yeah.
referring to. If anyone that doesn't have the chat open, I have shared with folks that we will be emailing the many handouts that you
Thank you.
have sent to me, as well as a copy of this presentation itself.
Yes.
So just
Yeah.
know that as Dr. Hope refers to, I have a handout for that. You will all get all of those handouts.
Yeah.
And then there was a good question. It's, kind of tough to answer, takes you into like marital therapy more, but it's a great question. Back when you were talking about the importance of consistency and with
Yes.
schedules and also
Yes.
rules and routines and being consistent with that.
Hmm.
The question was, is there any good advice, when your spouse does not have the same I've
Routines.
lost the question. Yes, but differences in approach and trying
Right.
to any good tips for kind of
Do you
working with the spouse to share the
Yeah,
differences.
therapy helps with that, and it's parenting therapy, more so, generally speaking, more so than marital therapy. And I do that a lot with a lot of parents. If it's two households, just know that your children can learn different routines in different households. They can. If you have two households, you want the timing to be about right. So we want bedtime to still be, if it's 9 o'clock, we want it to be about 9 o'clock at both homes. The exact routine might be slightly different. That's okay. And parents might have different styles. There might be a parent that always loves to shadow their kids or do things with their kids for all of the routines, just because they like it and they have fun and they have the time and they have the energy or whatnot. There are other parents that are more directive. I would want you to have some basic agreements on here are the anchors of our day, meals, school, work. Those are the things that we can't really shift and change a whole lot of. Waking up time and bedtime. Those are the anchors. And then all the other fill-in gaps, can kind of, range from a bunch of different activities. So you do the best you can. Kids will learn that parents are different. They will, and that's okay. And it's fine. I would tell you not to argue about it in front of the kids. That is, I remember once I don't know, we were having an issue. Gosh, this was years ago, back in the day where you would go to a video store, dating myself, and we were about to have, like a upset. And I literally looked at my husband and I said, "Oh, I think I have something in my eye." And and I was like, "Do you see this?" And he came really close to me so I could whisper to him and we could work out the difference, instead of doing it in front of the children, right? About how many videos we were going to get or something. I've forgotten exactly what it was or how late we were staying up. But you want to do things kind of calmly and privately. So you have family parent meetings, and then you have other shorter family meetings with the kids to introduce, routines and things like that. Okay. Sorry, that's not the greatest answer. It's going to always be a work in progress until you hit a stride. Okay. Anything else, Ramsey? Maybe not. Okay. Let me keep going. Hopefully you guys can still hear me. Ramsey, can you guys still hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I
Okay.
was
Good. Good, good.
I was muted myself. I one other
That's okay.
question
Sure.
was how to change the child's mode. One time he is laughing after 5 seconds and then he is crying. What to
Yep.
do in that case?
Yeah. I am going to, in a minute, talk about emotion regulation and
Great.
mindfulness. And there's some quick strategies that you can do. Okay. All right. Let me go on here to school success. There will be a handout, a separate handout on how to have success within school, and tips for homework as well. But I'm going to go through some of the key features right here. These are just some general pointers. When my kids are going into a classroom or whatnot, I always ask the parents, why could you email the principal or email the school counselor and say, hey, my kiddo has ADHD and they fit best. I know my kid, they fit best with a teacher that has like maybe these characteristics. I never say, I want Miss Jones. I never say that. I never point to a teacher and say, that's got to be the teacher. I try to have characteristics in mind, for, and as the years go on, you learn what type of teachers fit best with your child. You might not know right in the beginning in the early years. So I do try to ask for general characteristics. We want to make sure the classroom's organized, that there's smooth transitions and things. These are all really just good teaching variables. I think most teachers have these kinds of things in place. It's part of teaching, but I'm wanting to point it out to you all as well, just in case there happens to be a struggle, then maybe you can talk with the teacher and say, hey, I think this is, where the challenge is. Schools, public schools have 504 plans and IEPs. If there's a need, if the child is really struggling in the classroom or struggling with work or whatnot. So if there are needs, based on the child's needs, you can ask to have a meeting and they will, like create a list of accommodations or services that might be needed. And for the school system, again, reward systems work better than punishment kinds of systems. So if you're working with the teacher to try to improve a behavior, we want to implement a reward system of some sort. Okay. For in regards to ADHD and executive function, teachers are teaching executive function right from the beginning. That's why your school probably has a calendar and an agenda book. And, they talk about the time and they list the classes in order and they talk about the breaks and recess and the schedule. All of that's related to executive function. So schools are set up to kind of teach executive function, but there's some other additional things here that I've listed. The most important thing on this list for me is our ADHD kiddos. We need recess. We need to take a break. We need to rest and relax our brain and kind of de-stress. So, keep those things in mind. On-task self-monitoring. Again, preschool all the way up to an adult, you need to teach yourself, how do I make sure I'm on task and how am I doing in the moment? You generally start with a very small time period. The rule of thumb for every age of my child, I have 1 to 5 minutes of attention. So a 5-year-old might have 5 times 1 is 5, up to 25 minutes, possibly, especially if it's entertaining. But what we want to do is pick a small time period. If they're working on homework or a task like cleaning the room or something, and we're going to say, okay, just for 3 minutes, we're going to do this. And then you score 0 to 5. How did you do? How were you? Were you on task? Were you focused just on the homework? And you compare the answers and then you gradually increase the number of minutes, right? Even my college kiddos were trying to work on, they got a lot of reading to do. So let's set your timer on your phone, 15, 20 minutes. And then after every 15, 20 minutes, you take a short 1 minute break. So we want to teach this. It's a skill. Mindfulness is simply focusing in the moment on what we're doing. Any activity can be utilized for mindfulness. If I'm brushing my teeth, I'm focused on brushing my teeth. If you have your child take a formal class that kind of builds in mindfulness, martial arts, yoga, and so forth, that helps. Mindfulness games, and this is in a handout, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's my senses, my eyes, my nose, my taste, my touch, my hearing, and that type of thing. I can say, hey, name 5 things I can see. And the person that just asked, like, how do I shift a mood? This is an easy one. And it has no apparent connection to the mood shift or the problem, but it works. So I say, name 5 things I can see. Name 4 things that, I can feel. So my rear end on my seat, or the tag in the back of my shirt, or, oh, my cup is kind of cold, right? I name 3 things that I can hear, 2 things that maybe I can smell, and 1 thing that I can taste. That's mindfulness. I'm focusing my brain, thinking about the task in the moment. It interrupts the emotional upset of the moment. So it helps us to reset. It's excellent for little, mild tantrums and, panic moments and so forth. There's some games that increase, focus, like Simon Says or reverse Simon Says. But mindfulness is hyper focus, and it's super simple. It doesn't mean you have to meditate for an hour. Practice mindfulness and reward the kids for participating. So for homework routines, and this is in the other additional handout too, we want to have a routine that everyone agrees on. I've included a lot of tips here on this is the ideal way to kind of, set it up. I would tell you to work with the teachers, ask the teachers how much are you supposed to be helping. The older your kids get, probably the more independent they're going to want to be, in doing the homework. Let them try it on their own, but have that routine and try to utilize it every day. Um, let's see, anything really super specific. No, this is all self-explanatory. So focus on just establishing consistency with the homework routine. 3 strategies for helping. One's called goal setting. And again, you simply chunk your work and say, I'm going to work for 5 minutes, and then I'm going to do another 5 minutes. So how much can I get done in 5 minutes? Set my next goal, set my next goal. Beat the clock. It's not good for anxious kiddos, but beat the clock is you're setting that time and you're trying to race through to see, do you win, right? That's a fun one. And response costs for those kids that are always asking for help, want you right next to them. You can use something. You could put a bunch of jelly beans in a bowl. Every time they have to ask for help, you remove a jelly bean. And at the end of the homework period, whatever's left, they get to have. So whether or not it's nickels or quarters or jelly beans or whatever the reward is, but it kind of encourages, the child to be more independent. Okay. So again, I've mentioned the additional PowerPoint handout for school success, and there's another additional handout on common educational accommodations. I think there's like 15 or more than 15 handouts altogether, guys. So you're going to have lots of papers, lots of things coming your way. So go through those so that you can, read through them if that's where the need is. Okay, other ideas for emotion regulation, being able to kind of, like have calm throughout whatever the routine is we're doing in the moment. We really want to be able to teach, that are self-monitoring, self-awareness. What am I doing in the moment, right? What are my actions? What are my feelings in the moment? And what was that thought that just kind of raced through my brain? What was I thinking? And I've given you a handout where it kind of talks about, little tasks where you can stop to, name like what am I doing and what am I supposed to be doing, right? Or a picture with the body having all different kinds of sensations and, having a conversation with your child about it. So then in the moment of cleaning the room, you can stop and, say, hey, wait a second. What are you doing? What are you supposed to be doing? Nicely, smile, right? How are you feeling right now? Or what are you thinking about? And we're teaching this throughout the day. So it helps someone to then have a goodness of fit between what's going on and managing their emotions. This book is a wonderful book because it demonstrates a way to communicate about my stress. Whether or not you use a color system or a number system or you use faces, come up with something that your kids like. If they like the numbers and they can understand sequencing, 1 to 5, 1 to 10. Some of my kiddos don't like that because what if it's a 3.37, right? So that's not good. They might want to do the faces, or they might have hand signals, or they might like colors better. So come up with a way to communicate about the level of upset so we know what's going on. There is this strategy. It's called radical acceptance. Our kids are always already use acceptance. It's when we know there's a problem and we just can't change it. And we just have to sit here and tolerate, right? Whether we're riding on the bus, sitting in a classroom next to someone we don't want to sit next to. And we just kind of like when we're stuck in traffic, we can hoot and holler and everything, but that doesn't help. We just have to use radical acceptance. So sometimes it's teaching our kids about, hey, this is just a radical acceptance moment, right? I like to say the size of our reaction needs to be the size of the problem or less, right? So if I spilt milk, is that a little problem? I need a little reaction. There's a book that kind of demonstrates that. It's this book. It talks about feelings and it talks about little, medium, and big. And so my reaction, and again, you practice with your kids, especially if they've had a big tantrum, like, whoa, how big of a problem was that? You don't talk about the problem itself. You talk about like the event. How big of a problem was it? Well, what did you do? What could we do different next time? And so we're teaching the skill and the strategy. We're not punishing because they just had a tantrum and they wiped everything off the coffee table, right? Okay. Tolerating stress. I've given you a handout that has the tip skills on there. These do not solve a problem. Whatever the crisis is, the problem's still going to be there. But if I have a kid completely unraveling, the tip skills can interrupt the moment. It's a little bit like mindfulness. Paced breathing or balanced breathing, any kind of breathing that your child is willing to do and willing to practice, truly willing to practice, it works. It does. You can regulate your heart rate. You can lower your heart rate. Just like I can breathe heavy, fast, I'm raising my heart rate. I can also breathe slow and calm and lower my heart rate. And if you do that and have your kids like take their pulse, right, or use one of those pulse ox, monitors or an exercise equipment to monitor their heart rate, they'll see like, whoa, they have way more control than they thought. Okay, so the handout, the tips skills handout you have, and it has these different ideas. It talks about temperature, reducing the heat of our body, helps to calm us down quickly. Mindful distraction. I've given you a big long list of different types of activities for mindful distraction. I'm going to think about the activity while I'm doing it. If you want guided relaxation, my favorite app is insighttimer.com. It's free. And I would put in the search bar 1 minute or 2 minute relaxation. So I just like 1 minute a day. If we practice doing this, that's important. Okay. If your child is just like really needs to vent, listen. If they just really need to vent, they just seem to go on and on. They're going to keep going on and on until you listen. I hope you have time to listen. I know we're rushed sometimes. Sometimes you can say to your child, I really want to hear about this, but we've got to get over to the drugstore before they close or whatever it might be. And, as soon as we get home, I want to hear all about it. So you can maybe put it on hold, but we do have to give our children time. And if we teach them that we're going to listen, when they get older, they're going to keep talking to you. And that's wonderful, right? Later, if they tell you about stuff and you think you have some problem solving ideas, later you can problem solve a day or two or a week later, right? But not in the moment of listening. Empathy and tolerance are something that we have to kind of concretely teach. They're not always a preferred activity for most people. So we take moments where we can show, oh, that was empathy, or oh, that person was really tolerating. And if we know our kids are going to be in one of those situations, we point it out. It's a chance to practice. Come on, you can do this. And it's kind of like radical acceptance. And we concretely talk about it, vocabulary words, we learn about it, and then we practice doing it. And then we reward also. Okay, these next few slides I generally gloss over because they're about finding therapy. Therapy works. It definitely works for so many different things. Um, Medication for ADHD, it works. Talk to your pediatrician or your insurance company if you're interested in medication. I know it's a a hard decision for some people. Um, if you've been trying a lot of things and nothing seems to be working, please get outside help. Talk to your pediatrician, talk to your school counselor. We are around Kennedy Krieger. There's also a lot of other organizations around. As promised, on this slide, you're going to have my email address. So you can always message me and I will respond, I promise. Okay, I've given you some of the resources also that I utilize. There we go. I think I did
Well
everything.
timed. Yes, 12:31. We went 1 minute
Yay.
over. It did
Sorry. Oh,
no, it's so much information. Please don't
yeah.
apologize. Yeah, seeing lots of thank yous in the chat and
Good.
but it is, it's a large task to kind
It
of go
is.
through all of that. And I'm sure you could make that lecture a full day
Yes. Oh,
seminar
easily.
easily. But I just
Mm.
want to respect everyone's time and apologize that we didn't have a real Q&A at the end. But as
I can stay on for another minute or two or so.
Okay,
I'm
we can do
here
that. And
if
also,
people can
just want
stay.
to say again that we do have your email that will be shared, as well as all of those handouts and a copy of today's PowerPoint. If you were really into a couple of slides and then it just moved on to another piece, you could go back and study those slides and reference all of the other resources at the end of the slides. That's great. Thank you so much, Dr. Hope. This
Of
is
course, of
as a
course.
parent of a child with ADHD, I'm all ears. This is the second time I've heard the presentation, but I got more out of it listening to it a second time. So it's great. And thank you so much.
Yes. And Ramsey, you're going to have the recording. So if people wanted to go back and re-listen to it with all the handouts after you will learn more each time.
That's absolutely right.
Yes.
And I'm not sure if Alex left us. That reminds me, I will stop the recording now, but I think stop recording. Yep.
Yeah. I'm